and welcome to another episode of Benchwarmers. And as we never wish the summer away, the fall is almost here and it's almost time for football season. University of North Dakota looking to build on a 5-6 campaign. 7 of their 8 conference games for UND decided by 7 points or less. Ryan Kasowski, our Midco Sports analyst here, Tom Miller, beat writer for the Grand Forks Herald as well. And it was a team that kind of kept you on the edge of their seat in the fourth quarter. That was the fun part about it, but unfortunately they lost more of those than they won last year.
Yeah, you know, they right down to the wire at Missouri State, Southern Illinois, South Dakota State. You can take that a couple ways. Your record is your record, but you know, at the same time, there's got to be a feeling that they're not far off.
I think it's always that, you know, there's that encouragement that, yeah, you're in those games, you have a chance to those games. And but you look at the feel of a football team, you know, if you come away with some of those games and you win some of those, that completely changes your feel for your entire season. And I think this something this year North Dakota really is going to focus on is finishing those games.
The schedule, one of the more unique schedules I've seen when you jump in and out of conference play as much as UND does in the first month of the season, starting at Nebraska, big game, and then home the next week to host Northern Iowa in the Valley opener, then on the road in Northern Arizona, in the Big Sky again, then on the road at Southern Illinois. It's a tough start. It's a tough schedule for North Dakota to see how they can kind of bounce through this with all the different swoops and swooves they have to go through.
Yeah, the Northern Iowa game is really interesting because that could just have a lot of implications on your season and where you're headed. You know, I've been to Flagstaff in Northern Arizona, and UND really struggled out there. And you know, I think sometimes some of those places are just tough to play at. And I think Northern Arizona is one of them.
It certainly is, too. And I think early in the season, too, it's really going to be a test for North Dakota going on a tough trip like that, especially off a tough game with Northern Iowa, who is coming to Grand Forks for the first time since probably the 70s. You know, a tough matchup there for North Dakota right away. But, yeah, so many, you know, different places they've got to go and travel to. And I just think for North Dakota, they have to start this season off the right way. And
typically when you're early in the season, you really want to rely on the guys that have the experience, especially guys that have the ball in their hand a lot, to make sure that the atmosphere, the moment is not too big for them. And North Dakota does have that. You have a guy and a quarterback in Tommy Schuster that's played a lot of football. Bo Belquist has played a lot. Garrett Mogg has played a lot. Zavalny has really come on. Running back by committee, got a few different guys that have played a lot of football. That must help at least to have some comfort for Danny Freund and the offensive staff to know you have that.
Well, I think that's the key. I think it's the comfort level that I think Danny has you know, gelled a little bit more with Tommy Schuster, and some of those guys can have a better understanding of what Danny wants to run. And Danny's a young coordinator himself. He's probably, you know, becoming more familiar with what he wants to accomplish and how he wants to run his system. So, you know, like you said, a good starting spot with Tommy Schuster, Bo Belquist, and Garrett Mogg. That's a good kind of core to have to lead the way.
And I think Danny does such a good job, you know, leaning on those guys and relying on those guys and communicating with those guys with what do we do well, what do we need to work on, and what does the team think we need to do better. And I think Danny's the kind of guy that takes that stuff and really puts it into his offensive scheme and understands what his players are good at. And I think a healthy Garrett Mogg this year is going to be really important too for Danny, and to be able to feel comfortable calling plays. When he's healthy, he's tough to match up against.
And Danny always does a good job, it seems like, of putting guys in positions to make plays formationally. They run a lot of different stuff. It's a lot for a defense to get ready for, and we've seen that. But in order to do that, you got to be able to protect up front. An offensive line, maybe the biggest question mark coming into this season. Obviously, you lose Let's-Go, but there's some other guys along the line. Yes, there's a transfer that hasn't played a lot yet. We don't know exactly what you're going to get. There's some other guys that haven't had a chance to see the field. What do you make of the offensive line?
Yeah, you know, you lose a guy like Matt Willetsko, and I think the biggest concern is still the interior of the offensive line. You know, I think you're probably fairly comfortable with Easton Kilty and Donnie Ventrelli on the outsides, and from there, you just need guys to step forward. You know, I don't know if that's, you know, North Dakota State transfer Seth Anderson. Is it junior college transfer Braden Bryant? We still haven't seen Northern State transfer Jake Oliphant, who sat out all of spring ball with an injury. You would think that he would be a body that could push for playing time at guard. And then center is still a concern. They really, you know, since they lost Nathan Nguyen off that really talented spring team, they haven't been able to really fill that role like they would like. You know, I don't know if that's going to be a Peyton Lotus, if he's going to get healthy, a Grand Forks product, or if that's going to be Danny Carroll out of Kansas here, who's still a really young kid to ask to do that position.
And I think that's always the scary part, is you can have all the skill guys you want. It's those guys up front that have to be able dominate and win games for you. Because if you don't have those guys, it can be scary for a quarterback and for an offensive coordinator to feel comfortable calling plays. So I think that those guys up front, they've got to figure out who it's going to be. They've got to figure it out pretty quickly, because that's going to depend a lot of games on winning and losing.
We've seen North Dakota get a little creative in some of the recruiting aspects in terms of using the portal, junior college players, or other FCS players. They did potentially fill some needs on both sides of the ball, and that should at least be somewhat comforting as guys coming in with some experience.
Yeah, the transfer game is always a wild card, I think. You kind of can put them in different buckets. You have some expectations about junior college kids coming in, FBS kids coming in. Division II kids coming in is a whole new realm now. We're talking about when St. Cloud State shut down and kicker Adam Stage and linebacker Devin Chernowski came in and filled in right away. I think maybe there was a little bit more of a realization that, some of these guys coming in from the NSIC can do the job too. So, that's really changed things.
All right, guys. Quick thought on that, Ryan?
Yeah, no, I agree. And it's such a big portal. There's so many guys in there that as a coaching staff, you really need to narrow down your needs. And I think North Dakota's done a good job of that.
All right, we'll step aside and be back with these two guys to talk more about the North Dakota defense and special teams after this on Benchwarmers.
Thanks for watching Benchwarmers, presented by Avera Orthopedics.
Back with Ryan Kasowski and Tom Miller here on Benchwarmers as we dive into the defense and special teams a little bit. And defensively, when you look at the stats, 7 of the 8 leading tacklers from last year are gone, but that doesn't necessarily mean North Dakota is inexperienced on defense. There's still a lot of guys that have played that just were down the chart a little bit.
Yeah, I don't think UND has a ton of holes defensively. There's some key holes that that there are going to be some really interesting position battles at fall camp. I think a corner outside of C.J. Siegel. Evan Holm just locked down that spot for so long, and then they lost some of their depth via the transfer portal. So you're going to be looking at some young guys and a junior college transfer, and that's going to be an important spot to see who comes out of that one.
It certainly is, and I think that's one of the benefits of the way North Dakota plays is they do rotate a lot of guys, and there aren't necessarily just ones and just twos. They get a lot of guys in there, and they get experience for a lot of guys too, which really plays different. When you look at a season, when you lose that many guys and that many key players, to at least have some players who've played behind them, that's huge too, to be able to get those guys that experience that they need.
That front seven always a spot, especially when Bubba Schweiger got here. The way they play defensively, they attack defensively out of that 3-4. Need to have defensive linemen that can hold up, and they do at least have that with guys that we've seen play in the past, Jalen Morris and Jalen Johnson, Chanapir, just a few of there. But even guys behind them with Chernowski back and Navratil, they have to at least feel comfortable with those guys. They all know what they're doing in the system.
They do, and I think that's important too. When you have that, especially those inside linebackers, when you've got guys there that have played a lot of football for you and you feel comfortable, you can kind of work around that. And I just think that's huge that those guys are back there. And then if you're going to play in this 3-4 D-line wise, you have to be a guy that can demand a double team. And I think they've got that right now. They've got some guys that have to be able to, especially at nose guard, demand a double team so those inside linebackers can run around and make plays. And I think they understand that responsibility.
And we talked about losing Evan Holm, but Noah Larson's another guy who logged a lot of playing time for North Dakota over the last few years. But North Dakota always seems to have a way of producing big-name linebackers, and it's going to be very interesting to see who joins Charnowski in the middle. Is it kind of a solid older guy like a Caden White, or is it one of those new guys coming up like a Casey Kelly or Wyatt Pedigo?
Yeah, and that's always an interesting position for them because you've got to be able to run and do a lot of different things as a linebacker in this defensive unit. You talked about the secondary, just briefly touching on that, is finding corner, finding safety. There might be some shuffling around of even guys that are right now at one position that might end up at another just based on need, and certainly with some of the transfers coming in.
Yeah, and I think it comes back again to putting your best athletes on the field, and if you need to move some guys here and there, you do that. I think North Dakota has brought in some guys and filled the depth a little bit there that they need. But from a coordinator standpoint, for Brett Holinka to be able to play different coverages and play man when he needs to play man, he's got to be able to trust those guys back there.
And safety is going to be another one of those position battles to watch because Jason Coley is one of the more experienced safeties. He sat out spring ball. You know, can he hold down a starting spot, and you know, who's battling for that other spot next to him then? So that's going to be a big one to watch.
And certainly when you get into as many tight games as North Dakota gets into, oftentimes it's that unspoken third unit of special teams, whether it's coverage units, return game, kicking, punting. Where do you see that falling right now? Is that a strength for North Dakota? Certainly punting and kicking, you have the same guys back as what you had last fall.
Right, it was a question mark. You know, at punter, you're probably feeling okay about yourself because you have a large body of work with Cade Peterson. You know what you expect. At kicker, Brady Stevens is more inexperienced. He's handled kickoffs, so you have that. But they need to become more confident in his field goal kicking because that played into situations last season.
That's always the third of the game you forget about until you need it, you know. And I think that's for North Dakota. You need that unit to be solid for you. You need to be able to trust that unit, and if not, it gets pretty scary.
Yeah, it's always an interesting part of the game. Special teams, a punt block, all those things can play a factor. Guys, thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate it, and we'll see you down the road. All right, stay with us here on Benchwarmers. We will catch up with the new volleyball coach at the University of North Dakota, Jesse Tupac. That's after this. Welcome back to Benchwarmers. We are here with the, well, not so new head coach of the University of North Dakota volleyball program. Been on the job 7 or 8 months now. Jesse Tupac coming over from New Mexico. And I don't know how much time you need to get a volleyball program up and running, but you had a little time to at least get some players and get your philosophy installed so much in the spring. A very different looking roster. What's it been like trying to get everything together here?
Yeah, you know, it's been a whirlwind. I got here in January, and then the rest of my staff slowly trickled in over the course of the spring. But we hit the ground running, working with our team, and pretty much changed every little thing you possibly could within the program, from the way that we train technically to the way that we're going to run our systems to how we lift to how we eat to how we sleep, and ad nauseum through there. I think one of the most educational things for me during that process was just the reminder that for all of our returning athletes, this was their first spring off season. For the majority of them, because of COVID and what the world's been going through the last 2 years, they haven't had a traditional spring. The prior spring they were competing, and the spring before that, the world got shut down and they didn't have an off season. So this was their first true time to spend some practices getting better at their craft and growing at the game of volleyball without having to worry about competing that weekend.
And like any new coach coming into a program, there's going to be some turnover, there's going to be some additions. I think you said 8 returners, 9 newcomers, trying to mesh all that together. What's that going to be like?
It's going to be awesome. We're really excited. We've got 6 incoming freshmen. We have 3 incoming graduate transfers, and then the 8 players that are returning as well. And I think we're excited because the 8 that are coming back are all in. I mean, they have committed themselves to this program fully and have made the changes that are required for them to grow and get better and to be great every day. And then we're going to add 9 new athletes that bring an energy and an enthusiasm and a level of experience that was needed.
And you bring a nice experience, and so does your wife, who's also an assistant. Both you and Kristen coming in. You played at UCLA. She was an all Big 12 libero, I believe, at Iowa State.
Yeah, 3-time All-American.
Yeah, so I mean, you have the offense and the defense. That's an interesting dynamic as well.
Yeah, and let's not forget our other assistant coach, Jordan Vale, who's an alumni of the UND volleyball program. She was a 2-time all-conference middle blocker for North Dakota back when they won back-to-back Big Sky championships. And it doesn't stop at Jordan either. Our director of operations, Cassie Baird, she was a 4-time Summit League champion at Denver. And then our volunteer assistant, Darian Fikowski, just graduated from UND, but her junior year, the last time she was healthy, she led the conference in digs per set.
So you guys got a nice mix of players right there.
Yeah.
Priority since getting the job in December. I know part of it is you got to find a place to live. You just got to get settled in the community. But then it's also trying to get to know your players and trying to figure out how to reach them and get them to kind of the level you want them at.
Yeah, I think for us, step one was to establish a culture that was positive and uplifting, but also very bent on growth and learning and getting better. And it was an awesome experience to see the 8 athletes that we have returning make that shift and to commit themselves every day to getting better, even when it's not comfortable, especially when it's not comfortable. There's going to be hard days. And whether it's negative 30 degrees or, we have a tough practice or a tough loss, like it's our ability to bounce back from those moments that really defines us.
And you were an assistant at Denver back in 2016. Your wife was actually an assistant at Denver as well as a volunteer. So you know the Summit League. You kind of know how things operate a little bit. Does that help your familiarity, knowing the type of programs you're going to be going up against here night in and night out once you get to league play?
Oh yeah, I mean, we know this conference inside and out. We know what it takes to win this conference. There hasn't been a season that I've spent in the Summit League where we haven't won the conference. And so we're excited to pursue that every single day. And we know the coaches as well. And every single coach in this conference either was the head coach of their program when I was here, or they were an assistant and have since been elevated to be the head coach of their program. And so I'm excited to get out and compete against them night in and night out.
Well, you guys bring an interesting dynamic to. Do you set expectations with that? Knowing that, for you, you've won where you've been. So how do you instill that?
I think it's one, helping the athletes understand that they can learn and grow every single day. And whether it's getting better at a little skill like passing or setting, or making massive gains over the course of the spring. We saw that just with our returning athletes. We made huge gains in the weight room. We had an athlete, McAllister Gale, who actually touched 10.6 on her jump touch this spring, which is a program record. And so it's little things like that. Hey, we can grow in the weight room, and we can grow on the court, and we can grow as people. And if you're constantly growing and getting better, then good things are going to happen.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time to stop by, Jesse, and we'll be playing before you know it.
Can't wait.
All right, we'll be back with more Benchwarmers after this.
Benchwarmers on Midco Sports, presented by Avera Orthopedics.
Welcome back to Benchwarmers, joined by Chris Logan, the sixth-year head coach here at the University of North Dakota. And Chris, you played aggressive style. You put a lot of young kids on the field last year. They got a lot of experience, and I'm guessing you're hoping that's going to pay dividends here this season.
6 years, huh? Wow, it's flown by. It's been a lot of fun. We had I think it was 12 freshmen last year, the majority of which played, and we might be young on paper to an extent when you look at the classes that a lot of our team are in, but there's a lot of college minutes coming back this year, and that's what we're going to be relying on, is the experience we have coming back this year, and it should be pretty exciting.
As a coach, when you're throwing that many young kids on the field at one time, I'm sure you knew there was going to be some ebbs and flows, but how nervous do you get when you throw so many freshmen out there?
It was entertaining, to say the least. Yes. Some of the ways that they learn is through making mistakes, and we definitely got a lot of maybe ironing out some of those kinks in their freshman year to help leading into their sophomore year. And the nice thing is, too, that we do have a really strong senior group this year as well, which are going to provide a lot of leadership. So we feel as though the experience from top to bottom in terms of the college minutes that we've attained over the past year, it should put us in a pretty good spot, I would think.
And one thing that you're kind of known for, you like to play aggressively. You like to get up, you like to force the issue. And I'm sure your kids like to play that style, too. Now, sometimes that can go both ways, but at the same time, that's kind of a fun style to play.
It is. It's really entertaining, and it's a far cry from, when I first got here, I'd say we were fairly the opposite. And then as the program's grown, we've definitely tried to dictate more of the game as the years have gone by. And it has been fun. I think it was 2019 where my staff kept saying, let's just do it. And finally it's like, okay, let's give it a go. And it was very entertaining but stressful. And a few years on where we've got an even what I feel like a stronger group, that can control the ball more and move the ball fairly aggressively into some dangerous spaces. I think it should be pretty fun to watch.
When you went through the league last year, I think you had 5 games, 5 losses decided by a goal or a goal. And then 3 of those were, I think, 1-0. I mean, you were right there the whole time, and I'm sure these kids just want to give them a taste of success and know what that feels like, and I think everything else will follow, right? Yeah,
well, we had one returner who told us in the spring that she's going to score 35 goals this year, so apparently that's the problem solved right there. But we definitely worked on some of our attacking elements in the spring. We have a couple of very dangerous attackers coming in as well, and then a couple of other pieces that I do think are really going to help us this fall with hopefully turning maybe a 1-goal loss into a 1-goal victory, maybe even 2, who knows.
And you actually had a spring for the first time in a long time to actually do some skill development and some work. I'm guessing that helped for these young kids too, to have that opportunity.
Well, I've always felt like we've done our best work in terms of growth in the spring, where we get to actually teach our principles of play and how we want to do things. So getting the freshmen from last year into a full spring, but what was funny is the ladies on the team who are going to be seniors this year, we realized haven't even had a full spring. So it was awesome to get them into an environment where we could teach how we want to play instead of trying to just do game prep. And that was great to see the development over the course of the spring. And we felt by the time we ended our spring segment, we were in a pretty good spot.
And exciting too, you got a good schedule, good non-conference schedule. Minnesota's coming here. That's kind of a fun one.
That should be an easy one, I guess. Yeah. No, it'll be fun. They, we played them last year, and it was pretty tight. It was 1-0, and they scored a second with about 5 minutes left. But we came off the field, and as a staff, we felt as though we hadn't even played that well and hung with them. So it's kind of an opportunity to see if can we play well and see where the game goes from there. But it'll be awesome to have the Gophers up here. It'll be a tough challenge for us, but we have a strong group, and we feel as though we'll be able to give them a really good game.
All right, Chris, thanks for stopping by, and good luck this season.
Thank you.
All right, we will be back to wrap up Benchwarmers after this. That'll do it for this episode of Benchwarmers. Thanks to Chris Logan, Jesse Tupac, Tom Miller, and Ryan Kasowski for their time today. We have a lot of University of North Dakota live events coming up this fall. Be sure to log on to midcosports.com and check out our social media channels on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. For Marty Mueller and Jack Nyson, I'm Brian Shawn. So long for now.